Hey there, welcome back to my channel. So today is day 2 of my subscriber suggest series and the week-long series. I've done this entire series with other video suggestions one time before. This is obviously day 2 of my second round of it, so if you haven't checked out yesterday's video, don't forget to check it out before this one. And I've actually made a playlist of all the subscriber suggest videos that I've done so far and will continue to do. I'll keep putting there, and that's linked in the description box below. But basically this series is I gather up the suggestions that you guys leave throughout my other videos on either here on my YouTube channel or on my Instagram, so don't forget to follow me there as well. And I make a week-long series of the videos you guys wanted the most, or that you guys suggest and that I really think is a good idea. So today we're doing one that was suggested somewhat recently by Ritz Essence, so I hope you're watching today. But I know that a lot of people throughout the many months I've been on YouTube have kind of asked me for advice on this subject as well, so I know it's something that you guys are interested to know. So basically it's about mastering the art of blind buying. And I don't think I'm a master 100%, like no duds whatsoever, but because I have been blind buying for most of my life and I really, really enjoy it, and most of the purchases I make in fragrance are actually blind buys, I do have a lot of good tips and things that I've done throughout the years that I want to share with you guys, and hopefully it'll help you guys as well as you're blind buying, either, you know, just shopping online or trading amongst you guys in the fragrance community. So without further ado, don't forget to subscribe and let's get into it. I have a whole lot of tips and I'm going to divide them by theme, and then I'm going to show fragrances from my collection that kind of represent what that was like. They're not the only ones because, as I say, I have over 200 or so fragrances and I genuinely don't know. I need to do another count, but these kind of demonstrate what I mean of different tips and tricks for trying to master the art of blind buying. So the first one, obviously, and this goes without saying, but it gets better the more you're into fragrance, is trying to understand notes and compositions and accords in fragrance, but more so understand how you feel about them, how you like certain notes, how you like certain categories or genre of fragrance, and how they perform on you, I think is the most important thing to kind of have a good base of, to know, for example, if your body chemistry and your taste is very much towards the gourmands and very much against citrus, for example. If you're someone like me where more or less you like everything, and there are just certain areas where you're more struggling with or that you find irritate you the most, then you have a wider range to go through. But some people have less eclectic taste, let's say, and they have more of like a narrow taste of the things they like, and in which case it will obviously be easier to choose the things that you like because you're specific to that type of fragrance or that note. Personally, I'm someone who the areas that I don't immediately like, as for example, as you guys know who've watched my channel, the vanillas that are too Bath and Body Works vanilla, let's say, or too strong on vanilla, pure vanillas, I'm not a fan of. Chypre fragrances can often irritate me. Patchouli and peppers or peppery fragrances aren't my favorite. And what I do is, and we'll get to that later, personally I'm just someone who wants to try to get into every kind of fragrance as much as possible, so I try to train myself to get into some fragrances that ease that transition for me. But you by no means have to do that, and it makes it obviously a more volatile shopping, blind shopping experience because you are taking risks. So the first thing I would say is, if you know a note that you more or less always love and that does great on your skin, and that you're interested in, that would be a great place to start. And with that, I kind of always knew that I or for a very long time, I've known that I like iris. I really, really like iris, and one of the first memories of fragrance that I have where it clicked for me that I adore iris was with the Infusion d'Iris range from Prada. So that really helped. Knowing that there is a fragrance that highlights a note that you like is a really good base to start with. And I actually have this like mini set of the seven flankers, the original iris obviously, and then iris cedar, orange blossom iris, almond iris, I think it's carnation iris, vetiver iris, and mimosa iris. But I knew the original iris fragrance when I smelled it way before I ever had this was something I liked, and so that performed kind of an easy entryway for me to purchase irisy fragrances blind. And two examples of that were really, really great successes was Athalia by Parfum de Marly is actually very similar to Infusion d'Iris, which happened to be a happy accident, but it was a slightly creamier, slightly powderier, and a little bit more feminine version of the Infusion d'Iris, where I find it's a little more unisex. And I absolutely love it. It's in that video of the 3 that smell like me. And I find that if you have one fragrance that you didn't blind buy that highlights a note, and it doesn't have to be iris, obviously, it could be patchouli or vanilla or chocolate or rose, and then you kind of go off of that performs an easy entryway into other fragrances, even if the iris is completely different. For example, in Iris Prima, this is a very different irisy fragrance. It has leathery kind of, it's a darker iris. It's definitely more of like a fall time iris. It's a little more, I'll just spray this. Yeah, it's more of like a satin leathery type, darker, a little citrusy iris. It's not as feminine, soft powdery, but there's definitely the inherent powderiness of the iris, but it's a completely different take on iris, honestly. And I really, really enjoy it all the same. And it's from a different house. All 3 of them were from different houses, and all 3 of them were really, really successful. And these 2 blind buys were incredibly successful because I already knew for many years that iris fragrances worked for me. And I kind of used that to judge, to a certain extent, if another fragrance is going to be very iris-centric, more or less I'm going to enjoy it as well. Then my second tip is if you know that a particular house has their own take on a particular note. So in this case, the one I'm going to talk about is Narciso Rodriguez. If you've ever had fragrances from them, they have their own take on musk. It's a very recognizable musk, and musky fragrances and musk in general can go incredibly different. It could be very animalic and dark and not sweet at all. It can be very sweet and face powdery. It can be so many different things. So I don't think it's as easy of a note to kind of guess with as iris, maybe a little bit easier than musk because it could be interpreted in so many different ways. But the Narciso Rodriguez musk is one where it's just recognizable. Does it make their fragrances quite similar to one to the other? Yes, I think there's always that baseline that exists within them, at least the ones I've tried, where you immediately, if you're familiar with Narciso Rodriguez, you'll be familiar with the musk, and it's really just about whether or not you like that. So what helped me is this Narciso Poudre was the first one I ever owned from them. I had smelled some, I think the Eau de Toilette and the Eau de Parfum years ago, and I had like an idea that it was obviously gonna be pretty much a win for me, but I never smelled this, and this was my entryway. And then I remembered that quintessential musk that Narciso has, and so I stayed within the range because I knew that they were gonna stick to that. And so I got Narciso Rouge, which I love. Narciso Rouge. It again is similar, but it has that musk and it has just like a kick to it, which I really enjoy. And then I also got Narciso Eau de Toilette, which again is a little bit more floral, honestly, and less of a true powder, which this is gonna be. But they're all very, very similar in that they have that base level of the Narciso musk, which I absolutely adore, and I know a lot of people do. And it's led me to then be way more comfortable purchasing from the range. I actually tried, I think I mentioned it in a video, but I tried the ombre, the orange one in store, and in store it smelled so similar to the poudre that I just couldn't even justify getting it. But I need to give that one another try because it seemed so identical that I was blown away, and I was like, maybe I just have nose exhaustion. But I've also tried the Fleur, I think it's like the white musk one, it's like all in white, or pure musk. That one's really beautiful, but it always has that Narciso musk in the background. So if you know that you like a house's take on a particular note, and then they tend to stick to that, you're way more likely to be able to blind buy successfully or safely within that range. My tip number 3 is to try and see whether you like a house's overall, I don't want to say aesthetic, but what their overall mood for fragrances is. And if you tend to like that, then again, it's safe to stay within that range. For me, for a long time, when I was even younger, it was Chloe. I really, really liked Chloe fragrances and their take on florals and rose and just how fully floral they would go. And I know that florals seem to be, at least on YouTube, not a favorite amongst everyone, but honestly, I adore florals, and I feel like you just need to find the floral for you. And maybe the fragrances that you actually end up loving, you don't envision them as being categorized under floral, but a lot of fragrances, if not most, are actually in the floral category. So I knew that I liked Lovestory, and I knew I liked Chloe, and that kind of led me to getting a whole bunch throughout the years. This is, I think, Fleur de Parfum. This is Lovestory Eau Sensuelle, which is actually right now, as part of the Chloe's that I have in my collection, it's my favorite Chloe. I really, really love this fragrance. But yeah, I mean, more or less, it's gonna be safe for me to get a Chloe fragrance because I've been buying them for many years across my life, throughout my life, and they tend to stick to a particular mood of being very beautiful, white floral mixture cocktails. There are cases, like for example with Nomad, which I didn't grab out, that they go in a different direction, and I knew it was going to be more of a risky take for me, and I bought it because I wanted to, again, try to get myself more into chypre, and I decided to be more risky within a range of fragrances that I already knew and trusted, just in case. But in general, I think finding a house, for example, like Chloe, that you know, that you've liked throughout the years, that tend to have fragrances that are somewhat, again, similar, or at least in the same genre of fragrance, is a great way to continue blind buying and to do it in a more safe or successful way. So then we get to my 4th tip, and the 4th tip is probably one you guys are already doing, but that is, if you get a fragrance that you know you love and that it has a bunch of flankers, that is an easy area to, again, to start blind buying because you know that you already like the original. Now, what I decided to do for this one is pull out, there's a whole bunch of examples I could have used, but I pulled out my Insolence Eau de Toilette, which was the first one I actually got. I bought this one way before I bought the Eau de Parfum. This is kind of a classic taste of knowing that I love violet and candied violet, and buying this, A, because of the note, like the safety of knowing that it's a violet-centric fragrance, but also then leading me into flankers. Now, it can prove difficult because there are ranges or houses that the flankers are completely different to the original and don't have any of that original DNA, in which case, I mean, it could have been a fragrance all of its own, but you should be checking the notes before buying a fragrance anyways. That's like before even tip number 1. Definitely check the notes and see reviews or what people are saying and how it smells to them, either on Fragrantica or whatever website that you trust and decide to use daily. this is a classic case of knowing that I loved that, but then also seeing fragrances exist in this range and flankers. And so that led me to getting 3 of its flankers, the Eau de Parfum, the Eau Glacée, which I love, and then My Insolence. And My Insolence is actually very, very different to the others. It's not violet centric. In my opinion, it could have been its own fragrance altogether. And honestly, it's the one I like the least, which is slightly controversial in that I know it's everyone's favorite, but I am just such a fan of candied violets, and that one just goes in a very different, like, lemon, raspberry, floral area rather than the, like, smack in your face candied violet route, which I absolutely adore. But in general, it's a good idea to kind of look at a range of fragrances. If you like Girl of Now, which is right there in my collection, is another one. I guess I'll just grab it. This is another one where I smelled this one in store, knew I liked it, and that's what led me to getting Girl of Now Shine, which I actually love. I guess I'll grab it too. Girl of Now Shine, which I actually love one step more than the original Girl of Now, but they're both my favorite. And then Girl of Now Forever, which is the one I like the least because it's the one that's most different from the original. This also has raspberry lemon, and in my video where I talk about my Insolence range, I kind of compare these two because I do think they have similarities, which is just a coincidence of why I brought it up. But that is an easy way to try to see if you already know you like one of the fragrances in a range. You might as well check to see if the flankers are also up your alley. All right, and then my last tip I would say is the one where you just, is probably the most risky one, but just basically going off gut and instinct of trying to find a particular fragrance based on a particular note or a particular thing that you're looking from and running with it. So for example, banana and banana candy, specifically like banana medicine, is an area in my fragrance collection which I knew was lacking and that I absolutely wanted. So I had gotten the, I think it's the Coco Cabana or something like that, and it was a natural fragrance. And besides that, I always had my eye on Vanille Banane because it was the one that I'd heard the most of that had this kind of banana candy, banana medicine take. And what I can say about the situations where that happens, where you're looking for a specific thing, is to check online and to see actually what is available in that range. You can say, you know, perfumes that smell like banana candy or perfumes that have a very dark, bitter oud, for example. And then check the compositions and see what's available, what's near you, what you're willing to get within your budget, and try to fill in those gaps in your collection which you know are missing. Now there are cases where that can go completely well and you're looking for something very specific that you've got your eye on and it totally works out. Vanille Banane by Comptoir sur Pacifique is a perfect example of that. I absolutely knew what I wanted, where I wanted it from, that I wanted it on a sale or for this particular price, and eventually I got that. Another case is L'Autre Oud. When I started getting into Maison Lancome fragrances, I also knew that I've long been an oud fragrance kind of person, but I wanted one that wasn't so lenient on bringing in rose or just making it more wearable. I wanted a darker, more woody, slightly bitter oud, and that kind of was a happy medium of getting another Maison Lancome fragrance, which I know performs incredibly well, but again, searching for something that was in my budget and that filled in that gap within my perfume collection, and it ended up being a complete success. There are other cases, however, and it happens to the best of us, where you think based on everything and notes and everything that you can try to guess, where it doesn't work out and you think it's going to. It's not even seemingly like a risky blind buy. And I brought in La Tosca by in the Costumrati range by Xerjoff. This is a fragrance that, I'll spray it over here. It's violet centric. Based on the notes, it seemed completely up my alley, and don't get me wrong, I do like it, but I do not wear it as much as I thought I would. And when I got it, it was slowly but surely kind of turning me off. And I haven't worn it in a while, and I wanted to spray it the first time on camera to see if that's changed, because that's another like tip 5, I suppose, is even with blind buys that you think are not your jam, the best thing to do, in my opinion, is to leave them for a while. Try them out a couple times. If it's really not working for you, leave it for a while and revisit it. And sometimes that completely changes a fragrance for me, and I can start to like it and wear it from time to time. Now, having smelled this right now, again, after a long period, it still has that quality to it. There is something green and wet moss-like in this that I wish didn't exist, because the rest of the fragrance, if I like isolate other elements or notes in it, and the violet is actually really, really beautiful, but that mossiness has just over time completely overtaken this fragrance for me, and it wouldn't have been one that, based on the notes, I wouldn't have thought I would love. I mean, this is like quintessential me fragrance based on notes and everything. The performance is great. It doesn't just disappear. It's actually one that you can definitely overspray, so you have to be careful. And I even waited to get it on a great deal. Like, sometimes you can do everything right and it's a safe blind buy, quote unquote safe blind buy, and it still goes wrong. And that's just the reality of blind buying. So especially for niche fragrances or more expensive fragrances, do as I say, not as I do. Definitely try to sample. If you want to try to get a decant, and don't always blind buy, especially if you're unsure. I just happen to be that kind of person, and I rarely sample. But in the case of this fragrance, that is a perfect example of something that was really, really safe, and it just didn't work out, and I probably should have actually taken a sample. And then the last one is something that I do, so maybe you guys do it as well, but I just thought I'd mention. It is risky blind buying when you know there's literally nothing about this fragrance that might work out, but you find it for a good deal and you want to try anyways. So the perfect example is Intrusion by Oscar de la Renta. Oscar de la Renta is a range that I haven't had any great luck in. There's actually only one fragrance of theirs that I've liked thus far, and this is a very green citrusy fragrance, which in like a dated kind of way. And I knew there was everything about this fragrance was telling me that you're not really gonna love it, but it was in the $19.99. I think it was actually $17 at Shoppers. And it was just one of those days where you do a risky blind buy. And that is okay as well. Sometimes things that, if you're trying to do a very risky blind buy, the only suggestion I have is to make sure the really, really risky ones, the ones that you are 99% sure aren't going to work out, are something inexpensive where it's not the end of the world. And maybe if you don't save your bottles like I do, you can have someone in your life that you give it to, or give out decants. And I do that with friends as well. I just decant stuff and give things out, especially on fragrances where I know it's going to take me an eternity to go through. So yeah, I hope that helped. This was kind of the most obvious tips and tricks that I use when I'm blind buying, whether it's in store at somewhere like Marshall's or Winners or online. And it's the things that's helped me, I think, pretty much have way more than, I would say maybe like 80% success rate with my blind buys. There's always going to be situations. Sometimes it's almost at 100%, and sometimes you just get a haul and it's dud after dud. So these tips have really helped me make it so that more or less I'm always between 80 or 100% success with my blind buying, and I wish you guys all the best for that as well. And don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye!